Hi photo students, this is an introduction to your Long 2 assignment. This is titled Noun, and what you're looking at here are three different examples we'll go over in a minute. But what I want you to do for this assignment is I'm using the prompt of noun in the sense of a person, place, or thing as a way of giving you some constraints, but also just assistance in what to photograph. But there generally are three things that we're going to be looking at in terms of your ability to contextualize and think through what photographs to take, but also there will be some added techniques, technical facets that you'll be learning throughout this assignment. So part 1 is going to be due week 4, day 3. That's just your images taken. So just as our previous assignments, you have to have the images shot. This is going to be our long assignments that are in parts. The images being taken, I just want those set to a certain deadline so you have enough time to then move on to the part 2 where you get into the editing of the images, because that takes a fair amount of concentration and time. That's very different from the shooting mode of the assignment. So just keep that in mind. I'm not asking you to put anything on your websites for part 1. But just having an idea of using that as a deadline. So part 2 is going to be due a week beyond that on week 5, day 3. Again, those are due, our day 3s are Sunday evening deadlines. Now, those will be posted to your WordPress page that you've made for this assignment. Now, for this assignment, you're going to be making what are called triptychs, and you're going to do 3 separate triptychs. Each one of those are going to include 3 images that are in a sequence or tethered together, and so you'll have a total of 9 images. I'm going to go through that here so it makes sense. So your first series, which will be your first triptych, you're going to photograph a person, a place, and a thing, and I don't care which order you do that in. It can be a place, a person, a thing, or a thing, a place, a person. It doesn't matter to me. In that first series, though, you're going to address what are called formal connections between the 3 images. You can think of formal in terms of art as maybe color is connecting the 3 images, so a similar color repeats, or composition, the way that you compose the image creates a thread between those 3 images, or maybe there's a consistent element in each one of those images, like a shape or a line of some sort. I'll give you an example here in a second of what I'm looking for in that kind of formal connection. The series 2 is again a person, place, or thing in any order. In this one, you're going to create a narrative, which in essence is a story, right? A thread that connects the images together using a story. The most traditional being a beginning, middle, end. Something like that. So an introduction to a set of characters, maybe some kind of peak to a drama, and then a conclusion. Series 3 is going to be the hardest of the 3. So you're going to create 3 separate images that have a conceptual connection, where the idea represented by the images resides outside of what's depicted or is more important than the images themselves. So that's going to be the most difficult. I'm going to give you a couple examples of that here in a second. But what I did here is I also made a table or a graph showing you how this would look. So your formal series, person, place, thing, this is 3 images, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That gives us a total of 9 images, but in 3 different series. All right. Now, when you get to the editing part of this project, I'm going to go through here in a second your white balancing of all your images. I'm gonna show you some tutorials on some edits I'd like you to make to each of these images using the content aware tool, the patch tool, and healing tools. There's two different ones, a spot and a brush tool. And then I'm going to show you also a clone stamp tool. So there's a lot of new introductions here to different things you can do to these images in a creative way, or also in a just more conventional way. If you want to go above and beyond, it's not required. I give a couple more tutorials here on also aligning and distributing images on a single artboard within Photoshop. Go ahead and look at those videos too if you'd like, and if you want any help, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll come back to these in a second, but I'm going to go through these examples real quick so you can see. This is one that I consider a triptych example of a formal connection between three different images. Now this isn't three separate photo images, but I'm using some kind of art history analogies here, because I don't want to just give you an example that will say that you replicate or just do exactly the same way they did. So this is Mark Rothko. He's a painter. This is called the Central Triptych in the Rothko Chapel in 1966. And some things that are connecting these three: color, right? The location and the symmetry. So these two being rectangular or square, and this being rectangular in the middle. That connects the three, so we know that they're bound together, they go together. The dimension, so the size and scale of the images, those are really good formal connections between these three images, right? These three paintings. Okay. This is our example of a conceptual triptych. This is called the Dropping an Han Dynasty Urn by the artist Ai Weiwei. Now when you look at these three images, they're in sequence, and they're not person, place, or thing, but they're an example of concept in three different images. So I thought that would be a good example for us to look at. The artist is dropping this ceramic vase, but if you don't know the title on the bottom, if you're not seeing this component right here, you look at just the images as they stand alone, you don't really get to understanding the depth of the meaning behind the images, or the meaning that's trying to be conveyed, because you'd have to know that the artist is Chinese, that he's dropping a specific vase, this one being the Han Dynasty urn, and that has some significance and something that you may want to dig into or delve more into in terms of research or investigation, in order to understand why the artist would do something like this. Okay, that's very conceptual. So the concept behind this photograph, or the series, is embedded in its title, and you need to read the title in order to understand more fully what's going on here. That's very conceptual. Okay. In other words, let me say it one more time. The meaning of the image isn't completely encapsulated in the images themselves. You have to look external to them to understand more deeply what's going on. Now, the other triptych was narrative, and this one is by an artist named Dwayne Michaels. This is called Portrait of Andy Warhol, 1973. And what you'll see here is Andy Warhol, right, being photographed and shaking his head. So this beginning, middle, and I really like the idea that it's kind of telling us a story, like he's seeing something, he's frightened by something, he's unable to look at something that's he's witnessing, and so on and so forth. And I think if you're thinking about the photograph and him looking at the camera, looking at him, maybe there's something subconscious there going on. But like that idea of a narrative being derived from this sequence, right? Now, another conceptual example that I think also works really well in explaining concept that I think is a really difficult thing for many students to understand. So I'm trying to give you as many examples as possible, but what this is an artist named Jason Lazarus, and if you look at this work it's actually a video piece. He did do a archival print of it, but it's a video piece where you're watching the video and you just see this tree blowing in the wind, and you hear maybe church bells in the distance, and unless you know the title of this, which is the title is "The Top of the Tree Gazed Upon" by Anne Frank while in hiding in Amsterdam, and it was taken in 2008. But what happens when you read that title is that the tree goes through a transformation. It changes. Its meaning changes dramatically, because before you're looking at a tree and you're seeing just landscape, or the sensory perception that you may have, hearing the sound, seeing the movement, but in no way, shape, or form are you thinking about Anne Frank. Are you thinking about World War II? Are you thinking about Nazi Germany and its occupation of Amsterdam? You're not thinking about any of those things. But then once you read that title, that all floods in. Okay, that's a very conceptual strategy, using the title in order to influence and inform the meaning of the image. Okay, now coming back, let me go through some of the technical stuff here. I'm just going to show you what these links go to. If I go to this YouTube tutorial for white balancing, this is going to go over how to white balance. I'm going to also link to a couple images of what white balancing is, but in really basic terms, what white balancing is your ability to go in and alter the image in order to try to get as closely as possible to what was true color when you saw the image with your own eye. Okay, so because the camera, often our cameras are getting actually more and more sophisticated and better at white balancing and getting to that true color, but it's not necessarily perfect. Now, on your cameras, you are able to switch, and I put here white balancing in camera. You're able to walk into any scenario and try to calibrate the color temperature. That's getting a bit more advanced for us, though, so I'm not I don't want to leap to that place when you're taking photographs just yet, because I think that's a level of consciousness that I think is a little bit beyond the early stages of the course. But in general, every light source is measured in what are called kelvins, and they give off a color temperature, and the closer you can come to matching that, especially in shooting, the better off you are going to be in terms of editing in the long run. But you do have the option, though, of coming back in and doing a pretty decent job of correcting for that color balance if there's anything off, and making it much better. Now, in Photoshop, there's two different ways of doing this, and I give you a few different approaches. These top two I really like, because they use the calibration of finding what's called your middle gray first, but you can also do it by finding your true white and true black, and it's a little bit more laborious here, but I would start at the top and move your way down and see which one you like using in order to get to that true color. All right, now that's your white balance. I want you to white balance all of your images. Now, I want you to also do a local edit to at least 3 of the images, okay? At least 3 of your images of your total 9, okay? And I want you to use Content Aware, Patch Tool, and Healing Tools. I link to a full playlist of tools that we'll be using throughout the course from Photoshop, but I specifically link to my favorites right now, and I try to keep those at the top. So here you'll see that I've linked to my favorite content aware tutorial, my favorite patch tool tutorial, and my favorite healing tool tutorial. And I did the same here with my with the clone stamp tool, and this just is the same link to the same playlist, so you have kind of redundancy. Now I want you to also, at the end of doing those content patch and healing tool edits to at least 3 of those images, I want you to at least edit one more image using this clone stamp tool in a tutorial. Now I'm not going to labor through the directions of this assignment by going through and giving you a blow-by-blow on what those tools do, but I do want you to watch those tutorials, and they'll do a very thorough job, and you won't have to hear me as much. So I'll give you kind of a diversity of outlets for learning some of these tools. All right, so again, I want you to have just your images shot by week 4, day 3, and then I will post the second part as a reminder for week 5, day 3, which will just have a reiteration of these directions again. So don't feel that you can't get ahead if you want to. Right? Now, if you've got any questions, obviously reach out, and good luck. I look forward to seeing what you got.